Hello, it's Anthony Jacquin from Jacquin Hypnosis Academy, and I am back for a second round of questions, fireside chat, little interview with Helen Wyer. Hello, Helen.
Hi,
How you doing? So
I'm good.
we are here to talk a little bit about your work, the training that you have shared with the hypnotherapy community and how that's going, and and just zoom in a little bit more on how we can help people experience relief or freedom from the symptoms of irritable bowel syndrome. That's principally what this is going to be about. Um, so before we get into it, I'll just say for those of you that don't know that irritable bowel syndrome is what's known as a functional disorder, which implies it is a result of some disturbance, agitation in the functioning of your, I guess, your digestive system. Would that be the fairest way to put it? Your gastrointestinal system. So it's not a problem of structure. It's not that you need to necessarily go and have an operation, or be medicated in that way. It's about function. And it seems that at least a portion of that can be driven by psychological factors, history, stress, anxiety. So I guess we're going to get into a bit of that. I wonder if I can start there actually, Helen. Um, what percentage of people who come and see you for IBS are suffering in one way or another with anxiety?
100%. And
Without
what,
question.
yeah, without question. And what I mean by that is some people it's just anxious about life, just in just very general. And for other people, they might be going around life, able to get on, just go to work and things like that. But the thought of going on holiday, the thought of going to, I don't know, on a trip on a train or something, they're so anxious. Where will the nearest toilet be? They
Okay.
can function in their local locality, but as soon as they go out of that and go, well, where will the nearest toilet be? What if I don't know where the toilets are? What if I don't get to a toilet? So for some people, it's very specific.
Okay. And in that sense, is the anxiety a trigger for what happens next, or does it, is it kind of like complete the
Yeah,
loop?
it's all part and parcel of obviously of that loop, because obviously part of that fight, flight, freeze, I mean, there's something, and actually somebody who I worked with 6 months ago, they sent me a link this morning. They said, "Oh wow, I'm just watching something. I think it's on Amazon Prime, talking about the gut mind connection."
Yep.
And he said, "Oh, it just reminded me of you and everything that you talk about and things like that." Because as soon as we get anxious, all that adrenaline and cortisol that's in the gut, and it inflames that, and then that sends messages back up to the brain by the vagus nerve,
Yep.
and then the whole thing goes round, and it's just say like that loop, that cycle.
Yep. And in fact, that's the term that seems to be popping up now, is disorders of gut brain interaction. Suggesting that at least an element of this is about sort of communication between your brain and your gut.
I think it's really interesting though, because I mean, I did a history degree way back when, and I was reading something that was published in, this is ages ago now, I was reading it, but it was published in about early 1800s, 1700s, something like that. And even then, people were talking about things like, I've got a gut reaction to this.
Okay.
So even the language that people were using, I think they probably said lots of these, thous, and things like that in it
Yep.
as it was said. But it was, they still knew that that metaphor of a gut reaction, a gut feeling,
Mhm.
must have come from somewhere, is my opinion.
Yeah. So it's more than just an analogy in this case, isn't it? It's more than just a metaphor. It seems to be that thoughts or emotions or states have the capacity to affect the function of our gastrointestinal system. The other thing that um, I don't know, it doesn't surprise me, but it's how quick those effects can be. The person's
Mm.
had the scary thought perhaps about getting caught out, and then the symptoms really kind of accelerate soon after. Is that is that the case? With many of your clients, is that what goes on?
It is, and usually it's even because they've had that experience. The number of times people will say to me, they're really embarrassed, they're mortified that maybe they had a time where they didn't get to the toilet in time. They may have been at work, they may have been in a car, they may have been with friends, and they are so embarrassed.
Right.
And so that's there as well. As like they obviously, they don't. It's like a protectionism, isn't it? They don't want that to happen again. And
Yeah.
then, oh my goodness, how can I prevent that? And then the whole anxiety program begins.
Yeah. So expectation and essentially trying to avoid that experience ends up bringing on the experience
Yeah.
to some degree. So let's have a bit of good news then. I know you see a lot of clients for this, and you work on Zoom, right? So you work with
And
people
face to face.
and face to face, but
Yeah.
you do essentially see people from all over the world. I believe you have some clients whose first language is not English, so they're having to do a little bit of translation. You're still getting great results. You've got how many 5-star reviews now on Google Business? Well over 100. So give us a bit of good news. Tell us about someone who's had a major turnaround with this approach.
Well, I've got somebody who very rudely, because it was raining here this morning, sent me a wonderful picture of an island in Greece, where they are right now on holiday, and it's the first time they've been abroad for 20 years. So to actually go and be on have that sort of beach holiday and things for them to get on a plane to do that whole thing is absolutely huge. And she said to me, normally I would have only ever gone within about 40 minutes of home, because I knew then if I felt really bad, I could always get home again should I need to and things. So that's huge for her to do that.
So just to be clear, the reason she hasn't been abroad is because of this problem.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Yeah, 100%.
Right.
And for her, this person, I wouldn't say was generalized anxiety. It was that sheer fear of, well, what if I feel ill over there? What if on, plane, suddenly it's turbulence and they don't let the toilets be open, all that sort of thing. And even just getting to the airport,
Right.
because I believe they were about an hour and a half, 2 hours from the nearest airport. That journey just to do that,
Yeah.
let alone everything else, was huge.
Yeah. That's incredible. And they sent you a
Yeah,
postcard.
quite
Lovely.
often get sent pictures of people doing all these things, and it always makes me laugh because it's always when the weather's really rubbish.
Yeah.
I say
Yeah.
to them, really,
But it's you think about it, the studies suggest that it's at least 10% of the population are suffering with IBS. Some studies have it a little bit higher than that. 10% of the population, millions and millions of people, some of whom, like that last person, have been suffering that way for 20 years. No doubt they've exhausted trips to the doctor, potential medications. Um, a lot of them obviously chasing an answer via diet restriction and that kind of thing. So, and I know for many, they're utterly convinced, even if they haven't found the answer, they're utterly convinced that no, this is about sensitivity and food, and they're kind of very
Mm.
very much locked onto that idea. Is that something that you have to challenge along the way, or educate them about? How do you deal with that?
Yes, I mean, I always say to people in their very first call, I'm not a dietitian. I do not get involved with 'cause I don't know what I'm talking about really
Yeah.
in terms of true dietary advice. But what I would say is I just give what I call good basic general advice of, things I've learned, for example, that for women especially 2 or 3 days before a period, then it's more likely that they'll have more bowel movements. A lot of women don't know that. I'll also say, if you have, I don't know, say you're into curries or something like that, and you have something very spicy and hot, that might affect everybody, not just that
Yeah,
person. So it's just normal. And things like we all know, cauliflower sprouts and things like that can be a bit tough sometimes
sure.
on the gut. But
But
normally I don't have to get involved in dietary advice. And normally people say to me, yeah, we have a few things that maybe I don't eat anymore. But
yeah,
then I would say that the same for me as I've got older, but it doesn't mean to
sure.
say I've got IBS or anything like that.
Yeah,
So just good
absolutely.
basic common sense, the kind of advice that, say, my mum would have given me, that kind of thing.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. So I guess they then begin to grow in confidence and perhaps expand their repertoire a bit, and
Yeah,
have a small amount of spicy food, or
yeah,
something like that.
yeah.
Good. Okay. Um, I've just been reading this book. It was released earlier this year, the Routledge International Handbook of Clinical Hypnosis. It's got a it's got a chapter in there about gastrointestinal hypnotherapy. We know already, we went over this in our last little chat, that there's a ton of powerful science, the evidence base essentially suggesting of all the things that we may be able to assist with some hypnosis techniques, some therapy techniques. This is up there, at the very highest evidence base. It was just a number I wanted to share. It was there, but of course now the sensitivity of my mouse has scrolled through a few pages.
Mm.
Um, but in some of these studies, I think it was, here we go. We've assessed the long term effects of hypnotherapy for IBS and shown that 83% of patients remain improved up to 5 years after treatment. It's getting to the point now, there's almost 40 years of scientific research about hypnotherapy. In fact, it is 40 this year because the first study was in 84.
Wow.
So they've got some long term follow ups now. And what's suggested is that, yes, if you benefit from this, you make those changes in the session, that the improvements continue beyond the treatment. So I wonder if you've got any stories, feedback from clients where, yeah, they've benefited, but they've done their 5 sessions, they're still growing in confidence and stretching their wings a little bit. I wonder if you've heard anything like that.
Yeah, well, I mean, I tend to say 6 months and a year after those 5 sessions are completed, just get back in touch with them, as that. So, say if I'd finished with somebody today, in my diary or calendar, I'd just write down contact. So, if you contact Anthony and see how he's doing, and that would either be an email or depends how we communicate the most, things. And yeah, they'll be telling me about, yeah, and it is, I think it's because they really grow in confidence.
Yep.
And so the more they do, then that becomes a habit, and that old programming is left in the past. So yeah.
Okay. So just to
And they
continue.
often they'll have a knock-on effect. Of course it will, because a lot of the things that we do, whether it's for IBS or anything else, there's that lovely phrase, isn't it? You never know how far a change will go.
Yep.
And sometimes they'll start talking about stuff and I'll think, didn't even know that was a problem for you, but
Yep.
that's changed too. And
Yeah.
how lovely is that?
I mean, I guess part of it is perhaps that once they're no longer, not just suffering with the pains of this, but the hold it has on their life, that there's more chance that they can enjoy and satisfy other basic needs, social needs, psychological needs, having a sense of control, you know, uh, knowing in some sense where life is going. I guess more of that stuff that adds up to essentially feeling happy, feeling at peace, you know.
And you said there that hold IBS has on them, that is a huge, huge thing, because most people who contact me talk about, they just say my world has shrunk. And
Right.
it literally has, because they barely step further out, outside of their house. The one I always talk about is, they got the card from the dog,
Yeah.
because the dog was able to suddenly go for walks across fields around the park. So
Right.
I got this lovely card with a dog's muddy footprint on there, going, thank you so much, you've changed my life.
Yeah.
Because this person, instead of just literally circling the house a dozen times, was able to go off for walks and things. But I hear it, whether it's a youngster, whether it's somebody older, my world has shrunk.
Right.
So when you give somebody your life back and you can go out and live life, how exciting is that?
Absolutely. So we touched on confidence there and the sort of, the gradual return of that confidence. Um, you have a 5 session approach. I mean, typically it's going to be 5 sessions. And am I right in that you sort of spread them out so the gaps between those sessions get a little longer each time?
Yeah.
Could you just talk a little bit about that?
So the first sort of couple are roughly about a week to 10 days of each other. And then I'll go a little bit longer. And then, as you say, between the fourth and fifth session, depending on diaries, but it can be a month to 6 weeks between them, because I want that person to feel really confident that where they want to be, and it's a permanent change for them.
Yeah.
So
Well,
that's how we do it, to build that confidence, to go, yeah, and very occasionally, not often, at the end of that five, somebody might ask for one about 3 months down the line,
yeah,
and I'll do that as a one-off. But on the whole, I would say that five has really, it's rebuilt that trust within themselves that they can go and do life, and that's
absolutely.
that's great.
Yeah. And that's a big part of it because, we don't want people becoming reliant on therapy.
Mm.
You've got to take a holiday now and again too. So I know you're busy with it as well. Um, Clearly there's a demand. So is most of your business these days a referral business? It's just one
Yeah,
person.
I'll hold my hands up now and say I'm rubbish at marketing, but thankfully I don't, and that's because I don't ever have to do any.
Yep.
So I've got a sort of, depending on where, if I'm taking a few days off, but I've generally got a 2 to 3 week waiting list,
Right.
and I see, if where at all possible, about 4 people a day. So
Okay.
it's to slot there, and I will diary in all of those 5 sessions to make sure that they're in that right place, because it just makes life easier for me and for them. So
Yep.
yeah, I am really busy with it, but it's all referral, and sometimes it isn't IBS, because sometimes people go, wow, you made such a huge difference in this with me. I've referred my friend to you because they're scared of flying, or something
Right.
like that. So I don't, well, it's not all, but I'd say 90% is IBS.
But exactly, some people are happy to refer regarding habits and
Yeah.
fears and whatever else it may be. Good. So you've got a full time, or as full as you want it, a full time business. If people want to work with you and they can wait a couple of weeks, then they can get in your, get in a flow of things, get an appointment book, that kind of thing.
Yeah.
But we will surely share your link in the comments of this video. Um, Tell us a little bit about the training, because you put together this program essentially sharing the secrets of your 5 session approach. I think it was just over a year now. Don't know.
I think it
Time
was
flies.
2. How time
Really?
flies.
Goodness
I
me.
think it was, yeah.
Okay. So it's a couple of years ago. So there are some people out there doing that, hypnotherapists mostly, who have perhaps ignored this area of work before, but now feel better equipped because of your training. Have you had some feedback from any of those? I know you're very good at staying in touch with people, but have you?
Yeah, I mean, I just I mean, we whoever does the training, there's a Facebook group. So if anybody wants to share successes, if there's anything else that we've learnt, we'll put things in there.
Yeah.
Sometimes people contact me directly, and if I do, I usually say to them, please put that in the Facebook group for other people to know as well. But yeah, I mean, this is he's a hypnotherapist in Australia. And he just said, hey, everyone, just had to share some great news from my latest client journey. I've just wrapped up the 5-session IBS program with one of my clients, and wow, the results are seriously amazing. This person is feeling so confident, free in their choices, more so than they have in ages. It's such a joy to see that kind of transformation. Their symptom scales, because I think I said to you there are 21 symptoms, which we scale at the beginning. Their symptom scales went from a 9 to a 10, which is 9 and 10, sorry, which is the highest you can be, down to a 0 for their symptoms. And then he goes on about 3 weeks later talking about somebody else who's, only 3 sessions in, but the change is amazing. And then somebody in the UK, Northeast, I think they are, just signed off my first IBS client tonight. She was suffering extreme pain, bloating, alternating bowel movements 100% of the time. Now she's 0 pain, minimal bloating, 0 issues with bowel movements. All of her scores are either 0 or very long. One happy person ready to take on the world. So, that's
Fantastic.
people working with, having done the training there.
So some evidence. It's not just that you can pull off these miraculous turnarounds. You can show other people how to do it too, and
Mm.
they're getting
And
results.
there
Fantastic.
really is such a need.
Yeah.
And, as in my area, I've got sort of quite well known. So sometimes I'll get consultants call me up and ask if they can, share my details with people. And normally that's because they've said to me, and I always remember one chappie phoning me up and he said, well, I don't know what you did, but you've achieved more. Excuse me, more with this one person than I have in 2 years, sort of thing. And it's very exciting at the end of it. So say if it's somebody with more of the diarrhea type of IBS.
Yeah.
Now, I often ask them at the very last session to bring in, because they normally carry around packets of Imodium or things like that.
Right.
And when we get to the end and I say, what do you want to do with that now? And they say, is there a bin? Can I put it in there? That's a really great moment for both of us.
Wonderful. Yeah. Early days of doing it, I used to have people leave their cigarettes. Someone did it spontaneously, left them on the windowsill, and then over the course of years, I ended up with packets and packets and packets of cigarettes and a few cigars. So I can imagine the Imodium mountain is building. That's good. So one other thing, because like you said, there is a massive need, and you know, it's not massively expensive, but I guess for some, one-to-one therapy is still prohibitive. So I know you've also done a group session, and you're aware of other people out there doing that. So in a way, I guess group hypnotherapy makes it more accessible, perhaps makes it more affordable. You can work online, that kind of stuff. So can you speak to that a little bit? Are you, you're clearly a believer that this can be effective in group
Mm.
setups too.
Absolutely. And I mean, I'd never even thought of taking it in that direction. I think until we ran the first lot of training, and
Yeah,
it may have been you, it may have been somebody else said, have you even thought about doing groups?
yeah,
So that sparked an interest, and just happened to find myself at an event, and thought, well, we'll just give that a go and see what happens here, because people had asked me about that. Now, I've written down some notes. So I had 12 people in that group. You do have to set it up slightly differently, but again, if anybody joins the training, that's all explained. I think we did a Zoom live on it. We put in
yeah,
the and I reported back on it. Once the setup is done slightly differently, that's explained to the individuals, yeah, that can work. So out of 12 people, because I never say to anybody, whether that's one-to-one or that I can cure this, is a word that's not in my vocabulary. I usually say we can reduce or remove symptoms.
Yeah.
And that's what happened. So we had, out of that 12, 7 people lost symptoms completely, so just weren't there. 4 reduced significantly, so they felt they were able to do life in a different way. And then that was one more. And what they'd reported back to me, they said it had reduced, not as much as they would like. And they just said they recognized there was lots and lots of perhaps trauma in their past that they felt would be beneficial to then work with me with a couple of 3 sessions. It was on a one-to-one basis.
Yeah.
But, that had raised their awareness that, yeah, if I do that, then probably I'm going to overcome this as well. So that was great results. And again, I know somebody in Australia that's been, I think that's on Zoom, they're doing it and having similar results as well.
Superb, superb. So I don't know if there's anything else that you particularly want to share. I was thinking we could, look at wrapping it up. Anything else?
I'm just trying to think, is there anything else?
Well,
Just that
perhaps just tell us where people can find you if they'd like to work with you.
So my details are www.advancedhypnotherapy.biz. So they can do Helen at advancedhypnotherapy.biz.
That's an advance, not advanced with a D.
That's it. Yeah, that's
Yep.
right. The first D, but not the second. Not
Okay,
the second.
advanced
Yeah.
hypnotherapy. Yep.
Yeah, .biz, or they can give me a call on 07795 832 740. But I would, really love people to take this training, because there's too much for me to do by
Yep.
myself, and it's just such a rewarding. I love it. I really, really do. Just seeing that change that you can make for people.
Yeah, absolutely. And, I know I keep repeating it, I'm sure people get bored of it, but the fact that as a hypnotherapist, which ultimately is a complementary approach, we are certain we can get fantastic results, which do go beyond what medication offers at this point. I noticed on that, just reading through this chapter, that even when, people have medication tends to take care of one of the symptoms. So it might reduce the pain, it might reduce the diarrhea, but it doesn't tend to resolve the issue. And I appreciate if that's the relief you need, then I'm not telling anyone to what to do with their medication. But if it gives relief, great. But if your doctor can't look at you and say this has a good chance of giving you freedom.
Most of my clients are desperate to get off medication, because sometimes they've been on it for years.
Yep.
Sometimes that can have side effects which aren't particularly that lovely. So yes, it gets rid of this, but it causes that.
Right.
And again, I'm talking to a consultant at a local hospital not that long ago, and he said the difference between what we do is, he said, I treat the symptoms, you treat the causes, so that the symptoms don't even manifest. And I'd say that was probably a good way of looking at it. Now, I seem to remember, and I may have got the location wrong.
Yeah.
I think it's Hull or somewhere like that, hospital are now starting to train up their own hypnotherapists,
Right.
to help with this. I'm sure it's Hull. It may be somewhere else in the country. But again, just reading a little bit about that, it's probably we have to be careful how I say this, but sometimes it's not. It doesn't sound to be as personalised as the type of sessions that, say, I or you would offer. And so yes, people are obviously going to get, I would imagine, some kind of outcome from it.
Yeah.
But I think because, with the JHA training and things like that, we get very good at personalising. Yes, it's a general approach, but we also personalise it as well. And that's why you get the results.
Wonderful, wonderful. Okay, well, thanks for your time, Helen. I'm glad to hear you are continuing to, heal the world of its tummy grumbles, one tummy at a time. All the best.
What did you call me once? So you gave me an accolade of bowels bow down to me, I think.
Oh yeah, even the bowels bow down to this lady. Yeah. Good. Let's get
That
them in
still makes me
line.
laugh. That
Get
still
them in
makes me
line.
chuckle.
Great stuff. All right, we'll get that on a t-shirt and send it over. Okay, Helen. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.